Alright guys, so welcome back. So in this video we're going to start the process of making the weapon and the shooting system by letting the user have the ability to aim with his mouse cursor. So wherever the mouse cursor will be, the weapon will rotate towards that mouse cursor. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is make prefabs out of the weapon and the projectile sprites that my brother created. So we're going to come down here and create a new folder called prefabs, and then inside of this folder we're just going to drag and drop our projectile, and we're going to drag and drop also our weapon. So just like that, we made a prefab out of our weapon and our projectile. So basically a prefab is just a copy of the game object, and we make prefabs so that we can instantiate these game objects later through scripts. So for our projectile, we're going to be wanting to instantiate it from a script when we'll be shooting, and we also are going to be instantiating weapons through scripts later on in the course when we will be doing weapon switching. Okay, so now that we've got our two prefabs, I could just delete the projectile from the scene because we don't need it in the scene straight on, and I'm just going to parent the weapon to the player just by drag and dropping the weapon onto the player object. So now wherever the player will move, the weapon will move with it. And then we're just going to place the weapon in a better position at the center of the player. Okay, perfect. So now with the weapon selected, I'm going to add the weapon script so that we can code the functionality of the weapon aiming towards the mouse cursor. With that done, I'll just double click on it to open it up inside of my text editor. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is make our void update function that gets called every single frame of our game. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is to make a vector2direction variable, and it's going to be equal to the direction between the mouse position and the weapon's position. So to calculate a direction, it's very simple. You just have to subtract the two values together. So we're subtracting the mouse position and the current weapon's position, and we have to wrap the input.mouse position inside of this camera.main.screen2world point function, because input.mouse position returns a screen point, in other words a pixel coordinate, whereas the transform.position returns a world point, so basically Unity's default unit size. So we can't subtract pixels with units, so we have to convert the input.mouse position first into Unity units, and then we can subtract both of them together. So that's just something to keep in mind, but you just have to understand that we're subtracting the mouse position with the transform position to get a direction. Okay, after that, so we're going to make a float variable called angle, and basically we're just going to transform this direction into a angle using the mathf.atan2 function. Then we're just passing in our direction.y and our direction.x, and then we just have to multiply everything with mathf.rad2deg to convert it into degrees instead of radians. The next step is to convert our float angle into a Unity rotation, in other words a quaternion. So that's what you have to understand. A quaternion is just basically a Unity rotation. So when you want to rotate an object, you have to use quaternions. So the way we're going to convert our angle into a quaternion is just by using the quaternion.angleAxis function. Then we're just going to pass in our angle that we just calculated up here, and then we have to specify on what axis do we want to rotate our object. We want to rotate it on the vector3.forward axis. You just have to know that for 2D games, this is the axis you always want to rotate on. So just write vector3.forwards. And the last step is just to set the transform.rotation of our weapon equal to the new rotation that we just calculated up here. Okay, awesome. We can now save our file and we'll jump into Unity to test it out. As you see, we could move our character around and his weapon is rotating with our mouse, but it's not well calibrated, as you can see. So to fix that, we're just going to subtract 90 from the angle right here. So if you save now the script and go back to Unity and press the play button, you'll see that now the weapon is perfectly calibrated to the mouse position and we can aim with our mouse as we are moving. Perfect. Hey guys, and welcome back. So in this video, we're going to add the shooting functionality for our player. Alright, let's jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is open up the weapon script. So inside of the script, we're going to add a few variables. The first variable we need is a reference to what do we actually want to spawn. So what bullet do we want to spawn? So for that, I'm going to create a public variable of type GameObject, and I'm just going to call it Projectile. Alright, the next variable we need is a variable containing the position that we want to spawn our projectile from. So I'm going to create a public transform variable called shotPoint. After that, I'm going to create a public float variable called time between shots that will contain how much time has to pass until we could shoot the next bullet. And finally, I'm just going to create a private float variable called shotTime that will contain the time that we could shoot another bullet. So this will be more clear in just a few seconds. So inside of the update function, I'm going to check when we have pressed the left mouse button. So to do that, I'm just going to create a if statement checking if the input.get mouse button 0 for the left mouse button and 1 for the right mouse button. Then we want to run a certain piece of code. So before we instantiate or spawn our projectile, we're also going to check if the current time in the game, so if time.time is greater or equal than the shot time. So if the current time in the game is greater or equal than the shot time, then we can instantiate, which means spawn, our projectile. So the first parameter that we need to pass in is what do we want to spawn. So we're going to want to spawn our projectile. Then we have to specify at what position do we want to spawn the projectile. So we're going to use our shotPoint variable, so shotPoint.position. And then we have to specify a rotation that we want to spawn the object from. And we're just going to say transform.rotation so that the object instantiates as the current rotation of the weapon. Perfect. And right underneath the instantiate line, we're going to set the shot time back equal to the current time in the game, and we're going to add to it our time between shots variable. Awesome. Alright, so let me give you a quick recap. First of all, we are making our 4 variables, so our public GameObject projectile variable, the shotPoint variable, how much time has to pass between each shot, and the variable containing the exact time that we could shoot at. Then inside of the update function, we're checking if we're pressing the left mouse button. If we are, we're also checking if the current time in the game is greater or equal than the shot time, so basically if we're allowed to shoot. And if we are allowed to shoot, then we're going to instantiate or spawn our projectile, and we have to recalculate the shot time, setting it equal to the current time in the game and adding to it the time between shots variable. Okay, once that has been done, I could save my script and head over back to Unity. Alright, so inside of Unity, I'm going to drag and drop my projectile prefab into the projectile slot. Next off, we have to fill in the shot points. So I'm just going to go inside of my weapon and create an empty GameObject. I'll just call it shotPoint. And I'll place it at the tip of my weapon right here. Now I'll select my weapon and drag and drop the shotPoint into the shotPoint slot. And for the time between shots, I'll just choose 0.5 for now. If you now press the play button, you'll see that we could spawn these bullets at the position of the weapon. Okay, that's really awesome. Now all we have to do is add a script to the projectile so that the bullets actually move forwards. Let's do that right now. So selecting my projectile inside of my prefabs folder, I'm just going to create a new C# script called Projectile. Once that's been created, I'll just double click on it to open it up inside of my text editor. Alright, so the first variable we're going to make is a public float variable for the speed of the bullet. And we're also going to create a public float variable called lifetime. So this variable here will dictate how long the bullet can stay in the game before it destroys himself. We don't want bullets to stay alive forever, because that's going to clutter the scene with all the bullets that will be shooting, and that will make the game lag. So inside of my void start function, I'm going to say destroy game object after the lifetime has passed. So basically what this line is doing is that we're going to destroy the projectile once the lifetime has passed. So if the lifetime is equal to 5 seconds, it will wait 5 seconds and then it will destroy the object. Okay, that's nice. Now inside of my update function, I'm going to simply call the transform.translate function to move this object in a certain direction. The direction that we want to move it towards is the vector2.up direction, so that just means forward. Vector2.up, we're going to multiply it with our speed variable, and we're also going to multiply it with time.delta time to make it frame rate independent. And we saw what that meant in one of the previous videos. Okay, so now if we save our script and head over back to Unity, we'll now just fill these variables. So for speed, I'll choose something like 40, and for the lifetime, I'll just choose 5 seconds. Now pressing the play button, you can have fun shooting your bullets out, and it looks awesome. And as you could see inside the inspector, once 5 seconds have passed, they are destroying themselves automatically. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.